Hey, kids cook real food. Katie Kimball here for the Healthy Parenting Connector. And we are talking today about a topic that's a little bit near and dear to my heart. I wanted to be a teacher ever since I was in preschool. And now I'm an entrepreneur, something I never thought I would be, but it's a little bit in my blood because my dad owned his own business. And today we're going to talk about how you can raise kids with an entrepreneurial mindset, whether that becomes their job or just a way of thinking about life. So I'm here with Jodie Cook, and I'm so pleased to have you here, Jodie. Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
All right, we'll do the official introduction for the audience, and then we'll jump in. Jodie Cook is a proud member of Forbes 30 Under 30. Huge congratulations on that. Social Entrepreneurs in Europe 2017. Her work centers on the topic of entrepreneurship, inspiring others to take the leap or make a success of their venture. She's delivered keynotes to entrepreneurs, business leaders, and students about her experience being an entrepreneur, including an amazing TEDx talk, which I loved, called Creating Useful People. Fantastic phrase. She's also a competitive powerlifter and has represented Great Britain internationally. And she's the author of Clever Tykes, a series of storybooks and resources for kids ages 6 to 9. Clever Tykes is a great series, guys. It inspires positive, resourceful, and creative behavior by introducing entrepreneurial role models. And together with Daniel Priestley, she also wrote How to Raise Entrepreneurial Kids, all about raising confident, resourceful, resilient children. I love that word. It's one of my favorites, who are ready to succeed in life, including stories from more than 150 parents. And I believe that's how we got connected, is that I have a little story in your book.
Yes, you do.
So this is so cool. It's clear that you have a passion for entrepreneurship and for starting out kids with this, but where did this come from? How did you become an entrepreneur?
So my story starts when I was about probably 14 or 15, and I had this great passion to have my own independence. And I wanted to be able to, first and foremost, I wanted to be able to drive myself to places. I didn't want to have to rely on someone else to take me there. So my first goal was to get some money so that I could buy a car. Nice. And so that manifested in getting a job when I was 16, and then just always constantly applying for jobs, and sometimes having multiple jobs at the same time. I worked out the other day that before I was 22, I'd had 14 different jobs. And that was in hospitality, in some businessy stuff, some freelancing stuff before I even knew the word freelancing was even a thing, some volunteering, some retail, you name it, I would just apply for it. So school holidays, university holidays, during university, and then after university, I had a graduate scheme for a year where I actually had 2 full-time jobs for a year. Oh my gosh. So it was every day I would do 8 a.m. till 4 p.m. in an office. And then I would work 6 p.m. until 12 p.m. in a restaurant. So that was all with a view to saving up to then start my own business afterwards. And if I kind of go back to 22-year-old me, when I was leaving university, I didn't see getting a job as plan A. I saw it as plan B. And I think that was because I'd applied for so many jobs and just managed to get them. I just thought, well, it's not that hard, is it? So I can just use that as my backup option. And I decided that I wanted to start a business at that point. And I'd seen my mom running her business. So she had been self-employed for about 15 years. And because she'd worked from home, I'd seen her running her own business. I'd seen her get up early and go to networking events and get clients and do invoicing and all that kind of stuff. So I knew that it was possible for me.
Wow. I found myself trying to count how many jobs I had had by the time I was 22. It wasn't 14. I think I'm at 6 or something. But it's just really interesting because I have a 16-year-old right now, and what we're seeing in high school now, I don't know if you know about this, but tons of high school kids are delaying getting their license. They don't even want it at 16. And I look back at my own childhood and I thought, gosh, everybody wanted to get that independence. And so there's something has shifted, and I'm not sure it's a good thing. I think it's shifted a little bit toward entitlement and enablement, which are kind of dirty words. They're E words, but entrepreneur is so much better. So in your TEDx, you said that your mom did this one thing that helped form you into the adult you became. Can we learn from that? What was it?
Sure. So my mom was really keen on raising me to be very, very independent. And so I would get just thrown in the deep end in pretty much every situation, which maybe I didn't enjoy at first at the time, but now I am so grateful that that happened. And one of those things was that from when I was probably about 6, whenever my family went on holiday or away anywhere, it would always be up to me to pack my own suitcase. And she would just say, go on then, you know where it is, you know how long we're going for, you know what the weather's going to be like, all that stuff, just do it. And I had to do it, and my little sister had to do it. And looking back, it's a very safe environment for practicing independence, because what is the worst that could happen? I guess I probably wore some silly outfits on a few days, maybe wasn't warm enough, but really it's just absolutely fine. And I think that taught me, planning ahead, decision making, working within a constraint, all these magical entrepreneurial lessons. And then a further lesson was that if I ever had to book a doctor's appointment or a dentist appointment, it would be up to me to do it. And until very recently, I didn't even realize that kids had their parents do this stuff for them. I just thought it was a normal thing that you were 6 and you needed to have a dentist appointment. So you would call up the receptionist and say, hey, can I book this in, please? And the receptionist never let on that this was really not normal, that a child was booking their own appointment, but I thought it was. And even when I was younger as well, I just had to pay for my own phone bill. It was up to me to earn money to pay for it, or to decide what I wanted to spend the money I made on. And when I got to university, the girls that I lived with 7 girls, and there was only me and one other who paid for our own phone bills. And I remember just being like, what? Like who else pays for it? I didn't understand. It didn't make any sense. But all those small examples of just things that I just did for myself and didn't think anything of it. It was just learning how to be a functioning human being, really.
That's a really good example for us parents of what normalizing is. Your normal was so different than your flatmate's normal. And yet to you, it was just normal. And so that's our job, our responsibility, our privilege as parents. I always tell parents, we get to write at least the first chapter in the book of normal for our children. Right. And so yeah, what's normal? Normal was you being independent. So I would say for any moms and dads out there, if you are still packing your child's bag and they're older than 6, you can put the training wheels on, like have them lay out their clothes and check it, right? If you're worried that they'll end up, in Michigan in the winter with only shorts or something, but you can stepping stone that at least. That's how we do it, is we check our kids. But I have never had them make their own doctor's or dentist appointments. That's like level up. That's super interesting. Tell us about the phrase useful people. What do you mean by useful people, and how do you encourage parents to build and raise useful people?
To me, useful people means someone who can just hear of something that they need to do or they want to do, and they can just find a way to do it. And they don't get stuck with, oh, I don't have any experience, or I don't have any money, or I don't have any connections, or whatever it might be. Someone who can just go, right, I'm going to find a way. And that to me is a useful person. And when I was running my marketing agency, that's who we would look for when we were hiring. We would look for people who would just find a way. And we used to create quite a lot of hoops for people to jump through in the recruitment process, because we figured if someone needed everything spelled out for them, that might indicate how they were going to work in the role. So we would make it quite difficult for someone to actually get a job with us, because we thought, well, the useful people, they will find a way. So for example, one of the things that we asked people to do was to send us a video of them, just kind of, well, it didn't actually have to be of them, but send us a video to impress us and to tell us what they were about. And the useful people would just get on and they'd do a video, they'd work it out, they'd send it over. The not useful people would say, well, what kind of video? How long do you want it to be? How do you want it uploading? Shall I send it you in Dropbox, or shall I send it you in Google Drive? And we'd be like, just, we can work this out. And I think it's very, it's very obvious, but also it's a very good thing to think of being yourself. And I always think, am I being a useful person? Am I helping someone out with something, or am I just creating more work for them?
I love that so much. I actually do something similar when I hire here at my business. I tell people to send an email with an exact subject line and girl, if you can't get that subject line right, like you're out. I'm going to read your email. But similarly, and I love the phrase useful people. Jodie, you also say that successful people find their own inspiration. So any ideas for parents to sort of help their kids find their own inspiration?
Yeah, sure. This is such a huge topic, and the 150 entrepreneurs and parents who we write about in How to Raise Entrepreneurial Kids had so many amazing examples for this. So one of them was this concept of doubling down on their interests. So someone in the book talks about how his son was really interested in dinosaurs. So what his strategy was to just double down on dinosaurs. So they would get dinosaur picture books, they would watch dinosaur TV shows, they would go to the dinosaur museum, they would have a dinosaur bedspread. They would really just double down on this interest so that his kid could just develop the knowledge and the mastery around this topic, because his thinking was it doesn't really matter how someone learns mastery. It could be in any topic. Once they know how to do it, they can then apply it to other topics. Another example from the book is to just kind of let them get lost without pulling them along to the next thing. So if you imagine you're taking a dog for a walk and they want to sniffle the lampposts and you're always pulling on the leash going, no, next place. The parent in the book was saying a lot of people do that with their kids, and it never lets them have a long attention span, long enough to go and really investigate something that they're really interested in. But also it just kind of teaches them that you can't develop deep interests. You have to be always moving on to the next thing. So I love that as a source of finding inspiration and just playing and being allowed to be creative. And then another thing from the book is about noticing stuff and what you notice together. So even everyday situations like, why are we waiting in line? I think that's a really interesting question, because it leads to a discussion about supply and demand and why one shop might be busy on a certain day, or maybe why did that shop shut down, or what did grandpa do for work growing up, or what business would you put there? And having those conversation starters around businessy topics is something that a lot of the parents in the book were really keen on, to help people discover the inspiration and be inspired.
I would say that's also a recommendation against lots of screens, right? Because you can't develop an intense focus if screens are always available, I think, as a parent.
I think there is probably a way to consume technology in a productive way. So for example, what I said about the why are we waiting in line, or why did that shop shut down? It could be, what's great about this website? Or my co-author, actually, Daniel Priestley, said that when he was younger, his dad taught him about what a call to action was. And so they would look on billboards to see, well, where's the call to action on that billboard? But you could do that with a website now. So you could say, okay, what's the user journey? Like imagine a 8-year-old knowing what a user journey around a website was, or a call to action, or a squeeze page. So I think it could be adapted to mean that technology can be a productive part of someone's life.
Definitely. Yeah, for sure. To teach kids that this can be a tool, and it doesn't have to be, I guess when I say screens, for kids, at least, it's often mindless. It's that mindless video game, or mindless just consuming the YouTube or the Netflix. And so,
which isn't super useful and doesn't create super useful people, probably.
Well said. I love that you see that successful people don't care about what others think about them. That was one of your tenets of successful people. But Jodie, do you remember middle school? What do you call it in the UK? Like 7th and 8th, like when you're like 12 and 13, do you call it middle school?
We call it would be like high school or secondary school, but okay. I know what you mean.
Yes. So here in America, oh my gosh, middle school is just this awful time where middle schoolers think everyone is looking at them and that everything matters. And I wonder, did you have a secret to avoiding that tendency? Was that part of you when you were a kid, when you were a teen, or did you have to develop that like thick skin?
I was thinking really hard about this, and I was trying to think back to what I was like in middle school, and I'm sure that I cared what people thought about me. Interestingly, I always thought I had really big thighs, and now they're quite useful as a powerlifter, so I don't mind that now. But at the time, I used to hate that they were so much bigger than all of the other girls' legs. But I think probably my mom and dad played quite a part in getting me not to see what other people thought as like they didn't really put much weight on what other people might think. So a few things. One was that in my home, I remember that it wasn't a very judgmental place. And I think that if you are just used to not judging other people, you don't consider opinions that important, and you don't assume that someone has negative opinions. So I think that probably played a big part in it. I remember my mom and dad would just say nice things about people. We were never, if I think back to kind of gossip or neighborhood disputes or anything like that, there just wasn't any. It would always be, we're going to say nice things about people, or we're just not going to talk about them, because why would we just be mean? And so that was just a normal part of childhood. I think that my mom and dad probably also reframed what normal was, because when you're younger and you're like, can't we just be normal and everything like that. And I remember my mom saying, why would you want to be normal? Why would you, like, that's not a good thing. It's a good thing to stand out. It's not a good thing to be normal. And maybe if I came back and said, oh, someone was talking about me because I did this, she would have been like, well, good. Like, people are going to talk about you if you stand out. So that's okay. So just get used to it. So I think it was just all reframed. I don't think that I was had any kind of superpowers at all. I think it was just the way I thought about it because of how mom and dad reframed everything.
Mm-hmm. I would disagree. I would say your parents gave you superpowers. Right?
Yeah.
Like that is what an encouragement for us as parents to say, yes, okay, model the non-judgmental attitude, model the fact that you don't want to be normal. It's fantastic. I know you don't have kids yet, but you would write a great parenting book about your experience as the child, right? I just think it's fantastic. And in a non-normal way, you like to challenge things, right? So that was your upbringing. And one of the ideas I've noticed that you challenge is that academic skills, read and write and arithmetic, might not be the most important thing that we can teach kids. I appreciate that challenge. So, but I'm curious though, if you think it's possible to learn these enterprising skills, these entrepreneurial skills in a traditional school model, and if not, like, can we insert them into a traditional school model?
So first of all, I want to say that we probably all went down a traditional school route and turned out all right. So therefore, it is possible. A section in the How to Raise Entrepreneurial Kids book is about how to develop entrepreneurial thinking alongside school. And I guess it goes back a little bit to what we said about the judgment side of things. If a kid comes home from school and the conversation is, oh, what did you learn today? Oh, well, that wasn't very good, was it? Oh, well, why isn't that teacher encouraging you? Well, why isn't this happening? If you focus on everything that's wrong, school probably won't be a very productive environment. But if instead the questions are all about, well, what did you learn today? Who did you chat to? What did you do at lunchtime? What did you, there's ways of saying, there's ways of getting the positive things out of it in a productive way. I think at least that's what we heard from the parents who wrote to us about how they did that. But along with the research, I interviewed about 25 different entrepreneurs and business leaders about their childhoods and found that it was actually spooky how many things they had in common. And what we discovered were 6 key elements that appeared in their childhood that led to them being successful entrepreneurs and business leaders. And I do want to caveat this by saying there's a lot of survivor bias here, but the 6 ones were fascinating. And so they were inquisitive with a desire to learn. So they all had something that they were really, like the doubling down on dinosaurs, they had something that they were just really fascinated with. Another was that they had experienced a form of change or disruption. So one of the people who I interviewed, he'd changed schools 7 times before he was 13. And each time he had used sport as a way to meet new people and integrate back into a new school. So some kind of change or disruption that someone gets through, maybe it makes them feel that they are superhuman afterwards and that they can handle anything now that they've been through that. And the third one was big wide world, which meant that they had some kind of international knowledge or experience. So the same person who changed schools 7 times before he was 13, his dad worked in newspapers and he used to write about international business. So they would, when he was younger, they would pore over these newspapers full of stories of what had happened around the world. And there were other people who had relatives overseas, or they had people from overseas, like backpackers coming to stay on their sofa. And lots of them had these experiences that that they credited with their future success. And then there was independence as well, some kind of, I want to do this by myself, leave me alone to do this. And
which
then,
all kids start out with.
yes,
Like young kids all start out with that, but sometimes we don't foster it enough and then it dies.
yeah, maybe it's just, and I think it's probably quite natural to want to be like, no, don't do that, you need to, let's protect you. But
right.
yeah, maybe it can stifle independence. And then there was also experience of work, so they either seen someone work or they'd had a job themselves. And then the final one, which is like the kind of center point of all my work, is role models. Someone who was in their family or they knew about, who they saw either running a business or leading a business that they felt like they could emulate.
Ooh, and so you took that, right? And so you've created Clever Tykes, which if a child doesn't have an entrepreneur that they know, they can read about it and at least sort of, get that connection. Interesting too, that you mentioned the big wide world. But what I think you said is that the child doesn't necessarily have to fly over an ocean. You can bring the world into your home.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there were amazing examples. It was like even just having a globe and looking at it and being aware that this is where New Zealand is and this is where that is, and looking at different cultures. Like you can go on Expedia's YouTube channel and you can explore different cities. You don't even have to leave your living room to be able to understand that the world's a very big place. And I think that once you realize that the world is such a huge place, it helps someone think bigger. It probably also helps someone give less weight to the opinion of just that boy in the class that's saying horrible things about their big huge legs. It's like the one in mine. But then it probably makes you just see, probably gives you perspective and helps you see the world in a different way, which I think can only be good for someone's future.
Right. And perspective taking is one of the elements of critical thinking, clearly needed for entrepreneurs. And Jodie, you make a distinction between raising entrepreneurial kids, not kid entrepreneurs. Dig into that for us.
So the purpose of my work, at least, is about entrepreneurial kids, so that someone can grow up in a way that's resourceful, creative, resilient, so that when they are whatever age that they choose, which could be 18, they feel like starting a business is an option for them. I'm definitely not on a mission to create a load of kid entrepreneurs, and I think I'm definitely not on a mission to even advise on parenting. It's more to share stories. But there's a big difference between an entrepreneurial kid and a kid entrepreneur. If you look up either of those two terms, you will probably see someone standing behind a lemonade stand.
Yep.
And I don't know if that's always the most useful depiction, because actually there's so much more to it. And I don't think that successful entrepreneurs need to have started a business when they were younger at all. They just need to act like they could.
See, how encouraging is that? Yeah, that it's not all about, we as parents don't have to find this extra huge chunk of time, right, to like help our kids sell things. It's not all about making money. It's about this mindset and sort of training our habits. Obviously around here at Kids Cook Real Food, we're all about teaching kids to cook. We built that independence in the kitchen. And have you ever thought about the skill of cooking as like another foundation for where you can get some of these entrepreneurial habits?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, cooking and learning how to cook is all about independence and taking care of yourself. I think it also leads to loads of other benefits, like understanding a process, because taking ingredients and putting them all together and making something magical that other people can enjoy is a process. So there's lots of different learning from every stage of that. I think that learning about food and where it comes from and how it's sold and what's done with it and how value is added to it, I guess, can help someone understand a business as well, because so many businesses revolve around food that it just makes perfect sense. And then I also love that understanding food more and understanding cooking more could help imagine the future of the industry. So a company that I'm obsessed with they're called Moly Robotics, and they have a robot chef. So an actual chef used his hands to make different dishes, trained a robot, and now the robot can make those dishes with their hands. And so that might be the future of food, that robots are making all our dinners. And I just love that that's something that will be in maybe in our lifetimes, but definitely in all our kids' lifetimes. So yeah, there's loads of things that come from teaching people how to cook and understand food.
Yeah, thank you for that. Now, you believe that we can build entrepreneurial kids in childhood by helping them learn the value of work. And I really do think that there's a massive deficit in general with our young generation about the value of work. Do you have suggestions or stories maybe from your own childhood to give us parents some ideas about how to do this without seeming like taskmasters, right? Or maybe we're supposed to be taskmasters and just not worry about what other people think about us, including our kids. What are your thoughts, Jodie?
So from my own childhood, one thing I definitely remember is that my mum worked from home, and I remember that her work was important because I remember that when she was on the phone, we had to be quiet. And that was really, really, really important. So maybe that taught me that work was this important thing that you do that matters. But from the book, we had a lot of different suggestions around how parents can get their kids involved in their work. And it doesn't always mean setting tasks. So there were examples like, could you get them to join you for a day just to kind of be there and experience the work environment? Could it be about talking to them about challenges? There was a mom who journals with her daughter about the end of each day and what happened and what went well and what didn't go well and what they're going to improve next week. Some of the parents gave their kids projects. So there's a lovely cafe called the Little Green Frog Cafe, and their kids update their Pinterest with pictures of frogs because that's the name of their business. So it makes perfect sense. And that's a really nice way of them getting the whole family involved in their business. And there's a lady called Amy Cheadle who runs the Northern Doco, so pizza dough. Another food-based business, but with her family, they will talk around the dinner table about business ideas. So their kids have come up with ideas for their business that they have then implemented. And I mean, how fantastic is that to have a true whole family business where kids can come up with ideas and then see them in reality. So I think there are lots of different ways of involving kids in work without necessarily setting them tasks and having to tick them off.
Well, and when kids are involved in real work and not just like sweeping a floor, I mean, that's real work too, but not just chores, right? Like they're involved in the family business. Oh, I got something in my throat. Hang on.
Well, actually, my co-author, Daniel Priestley, talks about this because he's got 3 kids under the age of 6, and he wants to teach them that doing chores is not the only way of making money. So sometimes his kids will make artwork and he'll buy it from them. So yeah, it doesn't just need to be sweeping floors and horrible chores. It can also be creating art and then selling it. And yeah, I think it's a really nice lesson.
Yeah, there's always creative ways, right, to incorporate kids into being inspired to work. I'm so fortunate because my job is about kids. So my kids get to be in our videos, they get to be on TV. My 16-year-old son edits our videos. And so he's like really learning, possibly his career because I was an entrepreneur, right? And so, for parents out there who maybe you're not an entrepreneur, but maybe you've always wanted to have a side hustle. That's a great example for your kids. Or maybe you do set up a little something where the kids can make money, selling their bracelets or selling their pot holders or whatever. Well, this has been very inspiring, Jodie, and I love to leave parents with just a really big message of hope and something that they can kind of hang on to. So if you could encourage parents in one way, what would you tell them?
So right now I'm in Playa del Carmen, and one of the reasons I came here was because I'm part of a network called Dynamite Circle, and that is a network for location independent entrepreneurs. And all of the 1,500 members, we are geeks, we are nerdy, we have strange hobbies, we're intense people, we ask all the questions, we are total misfits. Yet pretty much every single one of the members are making a success of a business in a range of different fields. And I think that probably out of all of us, no one had a perfect childhood. Hardly anyone was a popular kid at school or even seen as, the most promising when you get those votes. And probably many of us went under the radar, yet everyone has figured out a way to define their version of success and live it. So I think the geeks that were once not very cool and now super cool. And in another 10 or 20 years, it could be another type of person. And I just think you don't need to be defined by who you were as a kid. In some ways, it kind of doesn't matter as long as you believe that you can become anyone who you want to become in the future.
I'm going to have my children listen to your answer to that question. And I would truly encourage other parents, especially if you have a middle schooler. Oh, it's so hard. Because that it really was encouraging. I think you will get the blue ribbon for the most encouraging ending yet here on the Healthy Parenting Connector. Thank you so much, Jodie Cook. Everyone go out, buy the books, have some role models to share. It's been lovely.
Thank you so much for having me, Katie.
And listeners, we'll see you next week with another expert that can help you raise healthy, independent, successful adults.